Sound check. Hey guys, welcome to the live broadcast. Dr. Ethan Thompson here with the Wellness Way Yorkville. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Wow, we got a lot of people that are watching. So thank you so much for joining this live broadcast. I know I'm back after a week hiatus. I went to my daughter's volleyball game, so I thought that was a little bit more important than doing a live broadcast. I wanted to go and support her for that. So if you are watching right now, do me a favor, say hello. Let me know where you're watching from as well. I always get a kick out of seeing people watch the live broadcast, and I sincerely appreciate it. I know that we have some people commenting about, hey, they've already consumed a lot of sugar and they're already sick this year. Maybe you got the flu. So I'm going to show you, though, tonight on this broadcast, and I'm going to have to move pretty quickly just to make sure I can get through everything, of why there is no such thing as a flu season. Now, if you disagree with me, just stay tuned for this broadcast, because hopefully what I go over with you is going to make a lot of sense. There's no such thing as a flu season. I'll explain to you why. So I'll show you what lowers down your immune system defenses. I'll explain to you why I would never ever get a flu shot. I'll explain the physiology behind that. And I'm also going to go over some pretty important COVID-19, COV, et cetera, vaccine information, which will probably get us banned on YouTube, but that's okay. I'm here for I'm here for it. Some pretty startling research in regards to that. And it just follows up with what I have been saying for years and years and years. So let's talk about why there's no such thing as a flu season. And I'll explain to you why that is here in just a second. So if you are watching right now and you're from the Chicagoland area and you want to work with us directly, please make sure that you get registered for the next inflammation event. That's when we will get you scheduled to work with us one-on-one as far as helping you overcome your health issues from a different perspective. So our next inflammation event is going to be tomorrow. Yes, October 14th at 6 o'clock p.m. The Approach to Inflammation. This is an in-person event. Make sure you get registered for that. Whether you are someone who is really struggling with weight gain, fatigue, poor immune system responses, problems with your hormones that's leading to thyroid issues, infertility, chronic joint pain, blood sugar issues, autoimmunity, hormones, all those things are really related primarily to an inflammatory response. And you'll learn and the inflammatory response, if you can't get that under control, you're going to see how everything else starts to suffer. So if you are from the Chicagoland area, you want to work with us directly, then one of the things I want you to do is just click on our Linktree profile. You will see the inflammation event. Go ahead and click on that. That will take you to Eventbrite, take you 60 seconds to register for that. And if you get registered tonight, a member of my staff will reach out to you probably tomorrow to confirm your attendance at that event. The only thing that we ask you is if you register, you're committed to showing up. And so that will be your ticket into working with us one-on-one, okay? Now, I also have a very, very important announcement. I talked to my staff about this because I kind of wore them out by doing remote consults. And so I went away from them for a while just to preserve preserve my staff a little bit. I was running them ragged a little bit, and myself too. But I talked to my staff and they're like, yeah, we can do it. We can handle it. So I want you guys to know one thing is that I am going to be opening up remote consults. So what does this mean for you? So number one, it means that you are from out of the area. You're not from the Chicagoland area. And I will work with you remotely. But here's the catch. Number one, we're only going to be accepting patients as men only. So men only as patients. And there's a reason why that. Please don't reach out to me and complain to me in regards to that. And then number two, you have to reside within the contiguous 48 states. So that is going to take out people from Europe. It's going to take out people from Canada. It's going to take out people who are from Alaska or Hawaii. If you reside within the contiguous 48 states and you're a man and you need help in regards to your lifestyle and regaining your health, then what I want you to do is please make sure that you call our office as quickly as possible, because we don't have a lot of space to be able to take a bunch of people. So call our office right now. Go back, pause the video, or write this number down, 630-553-6149. Call the office. We won't necessarily make you watch the inflammation event or anything like that, but call our office, let us know who you are. We'll send everything over to you and we'll get you scheduled for a remote consult and start digging deeper as far as what you need to do. So we do charge for remote consults. There's no doubt about it. If you want any kind of pricing information, just go to thewellnessway.com and you will see that on there. There is pricing information on that. However, I will tell you this is that, we do charge a little bit more for a remote consult, only because the amount of work that it takes and the amount of stress that it is on my staff. So we're only going to be taking a few spots for that. And if you're a man, you live in the contiguous 48 states, please make sure that you reach out 630-553-6149 to get scheduled for your first remote consult with me. And at that time, I will review some of your lab work. I'll review your history. And then if we need any additional labs in order to get to the deeper levels as far as why things are going on, I'll let you know at that point and what I want you to do in order to follow up. So please make sure that you call that as quickly as possible, because like I said, we don't have a huge number of spots that are going to be available. Most of our remote consults that we're working with are going to be on Thursday mornings. And so we do have a limited number of spots that will be available for that. So make sure you take advantage of that right away. So there's no such thing as a flu season. Now, let me ask you a question, okay? Because, when I say there's no such thing as a flu season, mainly it comes down to asking the right questions. And here's the first question I want to ask you. Is a virus intelligent? Is a virus intelligent? Does a virus have a nefarious plan? Does a virus have some kind of evil plan lurking out there to try to kill you? And here's the thing. A lot of times, doctors want to personify a virus, and a virus does not have a nefarious plan. And in fact, the virus is just opportunistic. They are just taking advantage of your lowered resistance in order to hijack your cell in order to start replicating. So biggest thing that I would tell you is a virus is kind of like a needy girlfriend, all right? A virus can be very needy. And the reason why is the virus needs a couple of things. It needs a host and it needs a receptor. So it needs a host cell and it needs a receptor. And if it doesn't have a receptor to be able to get taken into the cell, then a virus is nothing but just a protein. And so it will never, ever cause any issues with you. So it needs a host cell and it also needs a receptor. Notice how I put on here nettle and COVID. And the reason why I say that is even if you look at COV, et cetera, and you research what nettle actually did, is nettle is actually one of those herbs that kind of attached to the ACE receptor. Just remember this, if your receptors for COVID were always being covered and it didn't have a place for COVID to go to, then COVID just didn't cause any issues. Yes, you can actually get into the role of nicotine, how nicotine actually covers some of those ACE receptors as well. But I'm not going to get into nicotine, in regards to that. But you could have taken some things that actually covered up those receptors that didn't allow COVID to be able to get into the cell and to start replicating. So virus is very needy. It needs a host and it needs a receptor. And so, that's why I know that we always think about, the virus as some kind of bugaboo or, you got to just pay attention to that. And in fact, you're going to notice during this time of year that they're just scaring you into thinking that the flu virus has some kind of nefarious plan. So I want to show you immunity, kind of I don't want to say a dumbed down version, but maybe an oversimplified version of this. And I'm not making this for, some of the PhD immunologists that just, desire, have such a problem with, they want everyone to know how smart they are. But no, I'm going to kind of oversimplify it a little bit just to see how the immune system works. And what you're looking at right here is you're looking at a castle, okay? So you're looking at a castle, and then you're seeing here, if you go to my pointer, you're seeing a castle wall. And then what you're also seeing is you're seeing a moat. and this is how the castle defends itself. So if you look at the immune system, if you look at your body or your defenses as kind of like a castle, it'll kind of make sense as far as how the body starts to defend itself from some kind of pathogen or some kind of foreign invader. Your body is just absolutely miraculous when it comes to having a built-in defense system in regards to that. So the first thing that I would say is that if you look at the body has certain defense systems, known as the innate immune system, which are just built in. They're already there, and they don't require any kind of learning, which would be the adaptive immune system. But if you look at the immune system around the barriers, and right here, what you're seeing is you're seeing a barrier, otherwise known as the castle wall. But around the barrier, you notice that there's a moat, and that would be very similar to like your gastrointestinal system having a mucus layer. Okay, so it has a mucus layer, and within that mucus layer, it secretes something around the barrier when it's under attack, known as secretory IgA. These are kind of like the bouncers that keep things out of the bar. That's why I did a test read on some people and today, and very high in secretory IgA, and was because is that the body was putting up its defense systems, immune system putting up its defense systems, trying to keep out things from the gastrointestinal system. You also have a microbiome, which is the 75 trillion cells that reside within the colon, within that mucus layer, which is why the mucus layer is so important. And then you also have something known as stomach acid, which is so important because when you are low in stomach acid due to high stress or being on some kind of acid reflux medication or proton pump inhibitor, this is actually there to help to sterilize your food, which is why when you don't sterilize your food, why you can start to develop a lot of extra infection, parasitic infection, bacterial infection that take place. This is why you have that defense system, and it's really there in order to honor your body. It's not there to try to hurt the body. So number two, if you look around and you see the castle wall, you have another thing known as epithelial barriers. Okay. So barriers are there that separate the internal external environment. And you have barriers in all kinds of different locations. So one barrier is going to be the skin. You also have a barrier around your lungs. You have a barrier around the gastrointestinal system. You have a barrier around the genital urinary system, anything that's coming into contact with the body's external environment. Now, here's something that deserves to be mentioned is, when I ask people, a lot of people, in quote unquote natural health, I'll ask them, I'll say, hey, where does a lot of your immune system sit? And they say, oh, it's your gut. And I'm like, well, you're kind of right. Now tell me why. And they're like, I don't know. That's just kind of what I heard on social media, And so it just happens to be true. But if you really think about it, why would the body put a lot of immune cells in the gastrointestinal system? And the reason why is because it's coming into contact with the body's external environment. This is why a lot of your immune system is sitting underneath the skin. A lot of your immune system is sitting around the gastrointestinal system, only because it's coming into contact with the body's external environment. And so anytime that you have a barrier, you're going to have a lot of immune cells that are going to be patrolling the area. So here you have your epithelial barriers, or we'll call it the castle wall. And then sitting around the castle wall is you have some of these cells that are on patrol in order to alert the immune system that something is under attack. These cells are known as macrophages, otherwise known as big eaters. Depending on the location, they also can be called dendritic cells. And basically, these cells are the first things to devour a virus or devour a bacteria. But the thing is their purpose is to go ahead and to take the enemy off the castle wall and to start presenting it to other cells, saying, here's what I found, and now we need to start getting our act together. So they'll present any kind of pathogen to helper T cells. Helper T cells are just kind of sounding the alarm. They're kind of sounding off to other cells. Hey, here's what we found. We need to start making antibodies, and we need to start destroying or start picking off certain bacteria, certain virally infected cells. And this is why killer T cells are so important, because they have a sniper specific purpose, and the adaptive immune system doesn't cause a lot of collateral damage like the innate immune system does. And this is why if you have a really poor innate immune system, this is why then any infection can cause such huge issues as far as just bowling you over. But killer T cells have a very specific function. They have sniper specific function and they go in and once they're sensitized, they'll go in and they'll kill virally infected cells, but they also have a huge role in suppressing tumors. So if you look at this, it needs to happen in this order. It needs to happen in this order. The problem is that healthcare today says, well, it doesn't have to happen in that order. And in fact, all we need to do is just, inject, some kind of foreign protein into the body, and then that will take care of it. All right. Now, with what I just told you, this follows physiology. And so, when people say, oh, are you just an anti-vaxxer? I'm like, no, actually, the idea of it sounds pretty cool. The problem with that is that it doesn't follow the physiology of the immune system. So here's what happens is that when they're bypassing the barrier, injecting some kind of antigen into the system, number one, the problem with that is that they're bypassing the barriers because the infection needs to happen at the barrier. Number two, you are introducing foreign proteins, not into the barrier, but into the body where most of your immune system isn't actually sitting there. That's why a lot of your immune system's not in the blood, it's sitting around the barriers. And because they introduce a foreign protein by bypassing the barriers, and it won't stimulate an immune system response unless they add aluminum hydroxide to it in order to hyperstimulate the immune system. And aluminum is a toxic product. And I love it when doctors are like, oh yeah, well, you get exposed to aluminum. I'm like, you don't get it injected in your body. You're exposed to aluminum around the barrier. So this is why, same thing when people talk about mercury and fish. I'm like, there's a big difference between eating mercury and injecting it straight into your body. So this is why people always want to debate vaccine ingredients. And I'm like, you can debate it till the cows come home, and the powers that be will deny. But what you have to do is you have to start debating physiology of why it doesn't make physiological sense. Because number one, you're bypassing the barriers. Number two, you're then trying to introduce a foreign protein. And then number three, you're trying to hyperstimulate the immune system with aluminum, which is extremely toxic to the body. And so it hyperstimulates the immune system. And my thought is this: well, what's calming down the immune system? So if you try to hyperstimulate the immune system, what's calming it down? And that's why we have so many kids today with hyperstimulated immune systems. And gee, I kind of wonder why that is. Okay. So if you look at a normal immune system response, it happens this way: barriers, innate, adaptive. Barriers, innate, adaptive. Now what I want you to do is name a common medical procedure that's given thousands of times every single day, and name a common medical procedure that does it backwards. So name a common medical procedure that doesn't follow the immune response of how it's actually supposed to take place of barriers, innate and adaptive. And the common medical procedure is going to be vaccination. Okay. And this is all of them, not just the flu or not just the COVID. It's all of them. So people ask me, well, how many vaccines have your kids gotten? And I'm like, 0. Or actually, they've gotten all of them. They've gotten all the ones that have had proper safety testing, which comes out to 0. Okay. It is 0. So I remember I did a video because someone had asked me, hey, should I get the flu shot? And my response was, I just laughed because I laughed because I'm like, this is so nonsensical to me. The only thing that I could do is laugh. And boy, I tell you what, 90% of people are like, amen. Like, yes, I'll never get it, or I got it and I'll never, ever get it again. And then some people were like, well, if you go into the hospital, they shouldn't take care of you. And I hope you die, or, something like that. And these are just people that can't formulate a good argument. So they just wish death on you or something like that. But one of the things that I noticed is a lot of people say this: I got the flu shot and I never ever been sicker. Okay. But here's a question I want to ask: did the flu shot give you the flu? The answer is no. Okay. Because it's an attenuated virus in which they're putting in flu particles, but they're not presenting the whole entire flu, so that it's not replicating inside the body. So why did I get so sick after I got the flu shot? And it's this: didn't give you the flu, but it probably lowered down your immune system response, which made you susceptible to any kind of infection. And if you understand the immune system, your body is under attack all the time. Why having a healthy, strong immune system response is going to be so important. But can it lower down your immune system response? I'll show you the testing that can actually see if it's low or if it's not. So if you look at the flu season, because now we're coming into the flu season of October through April, and I really want you to think about it. Because now they say, oh, now it's the flu season. I'm like, well, what are we doing differently? We obviously have to be doing something differently because the flu doesn't survive better in the wintertime, but we're doing things that's changing our immune system responses. So if you look at October through April, I want you to think of this. We're not getting any kind of vitamin D because we're not getting any kind of sunlight, or we're not getting sunlight to expose our skin to produce vitamin D. This is why I think vitamin D supplementation is so important. I take it year round, and I always test my vitamin D levels, and they're always 80 to 90. That's where the levels are at. Okay. So October through April, no sunlight. We're not getting any kind of vitamin D. And then the other thing is we're exposing ourselves to copious amounts of sugar or copious amounts of glucose. I'll explain that in just a second. But if you look at Halloween, we consume a lot of sugar. Thanksgiving, we consume a lot of sugar. Thanksgiving through Christmas, we just take a break from anything that we're doing with our health. We have a high amount of stress, which lowers the immune system response. We have a lot of sugar as well. And then Christmas and then New Year's, we just douse ourselves with sugars as well. And then once New Year's comes to February, then we just make a plan on maybe I should think about eating less sugar. And then February 1st, then we finally say, let's get to the gym. Let's try to lose weight. Let's try to eat less sugar. Let's try to work out. Let's try to do some things. But if you look at that, we're spending 25% of our whole year just obliterating our immune system. And then we wonder why we get so sick. This is why this is called the flu season. But really, when you think about it, the flu season is really high sugar, high stress, and low vitamin D season. It really is. And so all that does is that lowers our defenses and makes us a suitable host for that virus to be able to replicate inside of our body. This is what actually makes it worse, because if you're already immunocompromised, then the problem is you're doing things that's bringing down and lowering down your immune system already. So if you're already immunocompromised, like the type 2 diabetics, the people who are taking corticosteroids, and people on certain kind of cancer treatments. No, I'm not saying that people don't need cancer treatments or anything like that, but all those things, what they do is that certain medications for autoimmunity, cancer treatments, type 2 diabetics, historically, you've seen a very, very low immune system response. And that's going to affect your ability to be able to handle not only a bacterial infection, but also a virus. They even say that on certain type of autoimmune treatments. They say, hey, this can increase your risk of infections. Then they also say can also increase your long-term risk for cancer, because that's all related to the immune system. But what's the medical solution clear across the board? It's get your flu shot. Get your flu shot. No one's actually going in and measuring the immune system response. No one's actually saying, hey, take care of yourself. They're saying, nope, you need a medical procedure in order to try to stimulate some antibody production. And we'll hope that it's the right type of virus strain so that we get it right. And I'll show you how wrong they are all the time. But I want you to remember this. You can't create something from nothing. Because even when you're talking about the flu vaccine, you actually do need a certain number of cells in order to be able to produce antibodies to that antigen. The problem is if you are severely immunocompromised, you won't be able to create antibodies if you don't have the immune cells to be able to make it. And here's the proof right here. This comes from a couple of years ago, and this was in the Annals of the Rheumatic Diseases. And here's what they said: non-bivalent COVID-19 boosters failed to protect against Omicron in patients with autoimmune rheumatic diseases. What they said is, after a third COVID-19 vaccine dose, patients with autoimmune rheumatic diseases often fail to mount an effective response useful in preventing Omicron breakthrough infection. And it wasn't because the vaccine was useless, which it was. I'm going to show you some research that's going to scare the living you-know-what out of you. But they actually said this. They're like, hey, you know what? These people, they're so immunocompromised that they can't make something out of nothing. And this is why they started saying, hey, if you're on any kind of immune altering medication or some kind of corticosteroid or something like that, this is why we're gonna have doctors recommend to go off of any kind of steroid medication or immune modulating medication for a month in order to mount some kind of response to the vaccine. So this is why, if you're already immunocompromised, this is why it just didn't work. And rather than say, what can we do in order to raise the bar and raise a person's immune system, they just kept saying, let's just keep beating the person until morale improves. So it just doesn't make a lot of sense. But it's interesting that they had to come out with this research study with, if I was a practicing physician, okay, I would say, and I really truly understood the immune system, I would say, hey, maybe like being immunocompromised, maybe it's not doing anything at all, just because I can't make antibodies when I just don't even have sufficient cells. But even doctors that thought that, they were probably scared to death to go against the narrative, and because they didn't want to be at risk for losing their license by going against the kind of narrative. Okay, so let's talk about some of the things that we do to lower down our immune system response. And this comes from the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition. I've gone over this article a couple of times because the study that was done, this was over 50 years ago. And just because it's an old study doesn't make it any more or less true. The role of sugars in human neutrophilic, which is a type of white blood cell phagocytosis, also known as eating. Okay, so cell eating. Here's what they actually said. Oral 100-gram portions of carbohydrates from glucose, fructose, sucrose, honey, or orange juice all significantly decrease the capacity of neutrophils, otherwise known as little eaters, to engulf bacteria as measured by the slide technique. Starch ingested did not have this effect. So there's a difference between this type of sugar and also things like fiber and things like that. The decrease in phagocytic index, or the ability of those cells to be able to engulf bacteria, was rapid following the ingestion of simple carbohydrates. The greatest effects occurred between 1 and 2 hours postprandial, or after they ate, but the values were still significantly below the fasting control values 5 hours after feeding. So the decreased phagocytic index was not significantly associated with the number of neutrophils. So eating a bunch of sugar didn't kill off the neutrophils, but in fact, one of the things it did is it decreased their function. These data suggest that the function and not the number of phagocytes or neutrophils was altered by ingestion of sugars. So they talk about how this can affect your body's ability to be able to fight off a pathogen. And I know what you're thinking. Yeah, but you're talking about a bacteria. Neutrophils have a role in a viral response as well. But basically what they're saying is eat a bunch of sugar and you'll start to paralyze the neutrophils for a while. They go on to say this. This implicates glucose and other simple carbohydrates in the control of phagocytosis, or cell eating, and shows that the effects last for at least 5 hours. On the other hand, a fast of 36 or 60 hours significantly increased the phagocytic index. So basically what they're saying is eat a bunch of sugar and you're going to be immunocompromised for at least 5 hours. So I eat a bunch of sugar, get exposed to someone, and now I'm getting sick. They also said that a fast of 36 or 60 hours, so anywhere from a day and a half to 2.5 days, increase the ability of those neutrophils to be able to phagocytize, or be able to eat certain bacteria or engulf certain bacteria. This is why, when you talk about fasting, fasting can improve the immune system. And I have talked a lot about fasting and things like that. In fact, I've done a lot of fasting. I've done probably 23-day fast. I've done fasted for 5 days. I've fasted for 6 days. Please don't ask me if you recommend it or not, because I have a lot of videos on how to do it and if I recommend it or not for certain people. But here's something that is actually strengthens the argument, because this comes from a textbook, Cells of the Immune System. And this is chapter 4. Neutrophil function impairment is a host susceptibility factor to bacterial infection in diabetes. Okay. So this is open access, peer reviewed chapter. And then if you look at what they say in that chapter, here's what they say. It is now generally accepted that high glucose concentrations impaired several functions of neutrophils beyond their migratory capacity, including phagocytosis or cell eating and bacterial killing. Hyperglycemia, or having high blood sugars, hinders neutrophil activity. Nevertheless, under glycemic control, or keeping your blood sugars within normal, diabetic patients restored intracellular calcium levels and increased cellular ATP content in neutrophils, which consequently improved phagocytosis. So, this is why historically in diabetics, it just destroys the neutrophils and severely impairs your ability to be able to fight off infection. And this is why, I will always say, this is why you got to keep your blood sugars under control. I just measured my A1C, which is my 90-day blood sugar average. My A1C is at like 5.1, keeping your insulin levels low. But this is why, people historically, if they have type 2 diabetes, why they're just so inflamed, they can't handle infections and things like that. And a lot of it has to do with the inability of them to be able to handle their blood sugars and things like that. But one of the most important things that I tell people is 95% of people just eat way too much sugar. They eat way too much sugar. Okay. That's why I will say this: eat meats and veggies, nuts, seeds, some fruit, little bit of starch, absolutely no added sugar. Keep your intake to support exercise, but not body fat. So, this is why, if you look at that, people can have tremendous health. That's why, within the Wellness Way, we have the no sugar diet, which is basically just meats and veggies. Man, I tell you what, we've seen some amazing thing happens when they go and they start severely lowering down their sugar intake. Okay. Now, you might say this, yeah, but neutrophils are for bacteria. No, they're not. Neutrophils have a viral component to it, and neutrophils are some of the most abundant cells. If you look at them within a blood test, especially, and they do have a viral component. But if you go to the CDC, here's what they say about influenza. Okay. Here's what's so interesting is they say this. What is influenza or the flu? It can cause mild to severe illness. And they're not telling you in certain people why it can be mild, why in certain people it can be severe. But the best way to prevent the flu is by getting a flu vaccine each year. I'm going to show you that in just a second. What are some of the flu symptoms? Fever, cough, sore throats, runny or stuffy nose, muscle or body aches, headaches, fatigue. Some people may have vomiting or diarrhea, and those more common in children than in adults. But basically, look at all of those symptoms, and what are those signs of? Those are signs of having an acute inflammatory reaction. This is why, when people say, "Oh, I'm sick and my joints hurt. Oh, I'm sick and like I have no energy." And this is why, some people are like, I'm like that way all the time. I'm like, you're probably running a lot of low grade inflammation. And that's why inflammation can cause things like pain, can cause joint pain. It can cause headaches. It can cause, fatigue. And that's why if you suffer with chronic fatigue, you're trying to deal with a lot of low grade inflammation. There's probably something that's really hurting within your immune system. So they just said, remember this: the best way to prevent the flu is by getting a flu vaccine each year. Thanks, CDC. Let's actually look at the effectiveness of the flu vaccine. This goes from 2009 to 2025. So if you look at this, the best it's ever been as far as a match for the flu and preventing the flu, at all, is 60%. That's the best in 2010, and 2011. So if you look at it, 56, 60, 47, 49, 52, 19%. That was a real winner. 48, 40, 38, 29, 39. And then lo and behold, when you come to 2020, 2021, there's absolutely no data. So someone was online, they're like, "Oh, you need to get the flu vaccine. You're just an idiot or whatnot." I'm like, well, should I get the 2020, 2021 version? You can see there's absolutely no data. And go ahead and put in the comments why there's absolutely no data on any kind of effectiveness for the flu. And here's the reason why: because they didn't measure it. And why didn't they measure it? Because they were too busy dealing with some of the kabuki theater testing that was involved with COVID. So no data actually on that. Kind of makes you wonder, huh? And just like that, the flu just disappeared. Maybe a lot of people had the flu and they decided to call it COVID. Who knows? All right. So if you go onto the CDC, they say something really important. Can I have the flu and COVID-19 at the same time? They say yes. it is possible to have the flu as well as other respiratory illnesses, including COVID, at the same time. Then why did the flu disappear in 2020, 2021? Health experts are still studying how common this can be. And yes, you can have both infections happening at the same time. It's not like you just have one infection and then it's impossible to get any other infection. And I'll prove it to you. If you have some kind of lung infection, very easy in order for some of the bacteria to kind of seep through and to cause another type of reaction. That's why you look at the flu. Very easy for people to get pneumonia, but you didn't catch the bacteria. You just had that bacteria start to grow out of control around the barrier that can cause some things. And this is just normal bacteria that are growing around the barriers. Okay. So if you look at influenza associated pediatric deaths by week, 2019, 2020, into the 2022-2023 season, here, this is just how ridiculous it actually gets. So if you look at the incidence of the number of deaths, you'll see that right around COVID, it went completely down to zero and it just flatlined. Okay. Just absolutely flatlined. Now, here's the thing. If a young child is dying from the flu, they are severely immunocompromised. And they won't tell you if someone dies from the flu, and they won't tell you the underlying reasons why, but a child has to be extremely immunocompromised, meaning what's causing someone to become immunocompromised? Are they on anything that could compromise their immune system? Any kind of chemotherapy? Are they on any kind of immunomodulators, due to some kind of hyperimmune system response? And so look at that. The ones that are dying from it, they're already very immunocompromised. And then, the thing is then when you look at COVID, it just absolutely disappeared. And in fact, even when you look at the flu, worst case scenario. So let's talk about worst case scenario. When you look at the hospitalization rate in 2017, 2018, when the flu was quote unquote the worst it has been, you look at the hospitalizations ran around 100 per 100,000 cases, confirmed cases. And that comes out to 1 in 1,000 confirmed cases at its worst. But if you went around to the general population, or you went around to elderly people who they're just trying to scare the bejesus out of them getting a flu vaccine, how many, if you get the flu, what will happen to you? Most people would say, I will die. So if you got to look at statistics, guys, at its worst, it was 1 in 1,000 confirmed cases. And now one of the things that they're saying is well, now just get your flu vaccine and get your COVID vaccine together. And in fact, now they started doing this. Now they're offering it, get them both together. And instead of getting your flu vaccine and getting, a gift card for groceries, now they're probably, giving you their firstborn child if you get the COVID vaccine. I mean, it just is absolutely preposterous. So the reactogenicity, oh shoot, it's a long day, of simultaneous COVID-19 mRNA booster and influenza vaccination in the United States. Now they're saying get both of them at the same time. Well, they looked at this from a couple of years ago and they found this was a self-reported study of almost 1 million people aged 12 years or older. And one of the things they found was an 8% to 11% increase in a systemic reaction compared to just getting the COVID booster just by itself. So you combine the flu shot, you combine the COVID booster. And one of the things they found is a simultaneous administration of COVID-19 mRNA booster and influenza vaccines may be associated with an increased likelihood of systemic reactions. Okay. Now they're saying it's just making the problem worse. Here's the thing that we need to understand. Here's what healthcare is not telling you is that it's not a virus. It never was about a virus. It's the host's ability to fight a virus. Can my kids or could I potentially get the flu? Yes. But I'm not scared of it because I know my immune system is strong enough. If I'm having the first presentation of the flu, some kind of virus, I'm going to have to go through an inflammatory reaction. But the thing is if my defenses are up and I have a proper immune system reaction, doesn't mean that I'll never ever get sick. But what it means is I'll be able to overcome it. So it's not a virus. It's the host ability to be able to fight a virus. And this is why you really need to be, rather than saying, oh, you're immunocompromised or you're old or you're elderly or you're type 2 diabetic. No, you need to go into the lab and be able to get some actual testing done. And this is called an immune system panel This is one of the tests. We don't run it a ton. However, really what this panel is known as is the CD4 CD8 cell, also known as an expanded lymphocyte enumeration. So if you go to the doctor and they give you just a common run-of-the-mill CBC, and you look at something known as lymphocytes, on this test, they're taking the lymphocytes and then they're saying, this is the type of lymphocytes that you have and the number that you have, because these lymphocytes are doing different functions when it comes to tumor suppression or different cells when it comes to the production of antibodies, and also with killing off viruses and things like that. So here's an immune panel that I ran on someone who had come in and they had cancer, but this is also post-COVID vaccine. All right. So I want you to look at this right here. So if you look at the CD3 cells, which is basically a combination of your CD4 and your CD8 cells, you can see that they're low. See that they're CD4 cells, which is really, really important when it comes to the adaptive immune system. You can see there's CD19 cells, which is responsible for antibody production. Their total white blood cells is low. You can see that their eosinophils are high, but this can be related to cancer. Their granulocytes, which are known as your certain types of cells that contain granules. One of the biggest type, most abundant type is going to be neutrophils. You can see they're really, really low in that. You can also see that they're really, really low in vitamin D. So clear across the board, you can see that this person is severely, severely immunocompromised. And this was after COVID-19 vaccine. And this was actually after cancer treatment. In fact, I measured their immune system after cancer treatment prior to the COVID vaccine, and then did a post-COVID vaccine, and it came out even worse. So this is the end result. And this is one of the things I did. If you go on the Rumble platform, you'll be able to find that video. But this is why when I just kept testing people's immune system after the you-know-what, and I saw that it was just crushing certain type of immune system cells, I said, you know what? We're going to have a big problem with the second wave, or you're going to have a lot of people that are going to be really suffering with long COVID, especially. And in fact, you'll see a lot of people, oh, I have long COVID. I'm like, you don't have long COVID. You have, I can't get rid of the virus initially. And that has to do a lot with being immunocompromised too. So you can see all these cells are extremely low. And if this person gets the flu, it's going to be a bad day. I don't care how you cut the cake. So, and this is why, if you guys saw this article, this should have been on every single news organization, and it wasn't. But this came out of South Korea in biomarker research. The 1-year risk of cancers associated with COVID-19 vaccination, a large population-based cohort study in South Korea. So they looked at well over 8 million people. They looked at over 8 million people, and here's what they found, okay? They found an increased risk of cancers after 1 year. So they saw an increase in thyroid cancer by about 35%, gastric cancer, 33%, colorectal cancer, 28%, lung cancer, 53%, breast cancer, 20%, prostate cancer saw one of the largest increases at about 69%. So you're seeing that there is an increased risk of cancers in people who are taking the actual vaccine. The thing that has to happen, guys, is, everybody thinks, oh, it's causing the cancer. I'm like, no, what it's doing is that it's destroying the cells that are keeping tumor progression under control, which is your CD8 cells. That's why, if you destroy your CD8 cells, this is why you've lost the very thing that's there in order to suppress tumors, and that's why they're calling it turbo cancers, things like that, because you just lost the body's ability to be able to suppress cancer, suppress tumors, and to suppress viruses too. But you're seeing a significant increase in all of that. And here's what I find interesting is that some people will say, oh, is this peer reviewed? I'm like, I don't know if it's peer reviewed or not, but you know what? You didn't require any peer review to go get your precious vaccine. You didn't require any peer review. You were the first one in line, rolling up your arm, ready to get stuck with the jab. Boy, you were ready to do that. You never asked about it being peer reviewed or not. But boy, you're super interested in it being peer reviewed, when it comes to something that's going against your narrative. Okay. That's what I find disgusting in healthcare. All right. Off my soapbox. Now, here's the thing is that here's another immune system panel. And I'm going to give you the story of why I ran this. So if you look at this person, And you'll see a huge contrast between this person right here and this immune system panel. Because if you look at this person has a beautiful number of CD3, CD4, CD8, CD19, CD56 natural killer cells, lymphocytes and things like that. My question is if this person gets the flu, how will they respond? They'll respond normally. Does it mean that they'll not get sick? Nope, but they'll be able to overcome it. So the reason why I ran this test and whose test this is this is my oldest son's test, Talon. Okay. He's now 18 years of age and just such a wonderful kid. And here's the reason why I ran that, because for him, he had COVID, and the COVID was a 2-day sniffle. Literally, that's what it was. And then one day before going to school, this was during the quote unquote pandemic, he had some sniffles. He went to school. They quickly flagged him. They sent him home. And they said, you got to be home for 10 days because we don't know if you have COVID. We don't want you like being a petri dish and spreading it around to other people. I called them up and I said, he's already had COVID. They said, doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Natural immunity doesn't matter. So I said, Talon, come in the lab. We're going to draw your blood. We're going to do an immune system panel. We're also going to do an antibody test to see if you've had exposure to COVID-19. And yes, he did. And then I ran his immune system panel, and you can see how beautiful his response was. And in fact, he'll respond normally to every single virus. This is why we don't fear a virus. We don't fear a bacteria. But what we fear is, most importantly, is being immunocompromised. And so they looked at this. They saw that he already had antibodies or already had COVID-19, and they wouldn't let him back to school. And I just got to thinking, I'm like, the health experts, they either have to be incredibly stupid or incredibly corrupt. They would be stupid because they would realize he's already had exposure. He's already built an antibody response to it. He's not going to be spreading around to other people. Or they have to be incredibly corrupt. It has to be one or the other, but it can't be none of them. And that's when I truly realized that this whole idea is just straight out kabuki theater. And it's just a bunch of people, who are considered health experts that, quite honestly, I don't think they could crawl themselves out of a paper bag unless you gave them explicit directions how it was. They're just following marching orders. And none of them ever stood up and said, you know what, this doesn't make a lot of sense. So you can see that he'll respond beautifully to any kind of virus. Why? Because I've measured his immune system profile. So if you go back to Guyton and Hall's medical textbook of physiology, I love how they call it medical physiology. It's just physiology. I don't know if there's a difference between medical or natural health. It's just physiology. So Guyton and Hall's textbook of medical physiology, 13th edition. This is the latest edition. And this is actually, I read this book front to back, in chiropractic school. It was an earlier edition, but I pulled this from here because they even give you clues as far as how the immune system actually works. And here's what they say. Our bodies are at all times exposed to bacteria, viruses, fungi, and parasites, all of which occur even normally and to varying degrees in the skin, the mouth, the respiratory passageways, and the intestinal tract, the lining membranes of the eyes, and even the urinary tract. Okay. It's particularly true, if someone is getting chronic urinary tract infections, especially after menopause. Now, they say this. Our bodies have a special system for combating the different infectious and toxic agents. This is composed of the blood leukocytes, or otherwise known as the white blood cells. These cells work together in two ways to prevent disease or to prevent infection: by actually destroying the invading agents by phagocytosis, talked about this, and by forming antibodies and sensitized lymphocytes, one or both of which may destroy or inactivate the invader. So they actually say this. You have bacteria all the time that you're exposed to. Your body is always constantly fighting a battle between bacteria and things like that. But they go on to say this. Now listen to this. Leukopenia, or having low white blood cells. This is a clinical condition known as leukopenia, occurs in which the bone marrow stops producing white blood cells. Okay. Normally, now listen to this. Normally, the human body lives in symbiosis or in balance with many bacteria because all of the mucous membranes of the body are constantly exposed to large numbers of bacteria. The mouth almost always contains various spirochetal, pneumococcal, and streptococcal bacteria. And these same bacteria are present to a lesser extent in the entire respiratory tract. They're already there. Okay. They're already there. The gastrointestinal tract is especially loaded with colon bacteria or colon bacilli. Now, here's what they go on to say. Any decrease in the number of white blood cells immediately allows invasion of the tissues by the bacteria that are already present in the body. So within 2 days after the bone marrow stops producing white blood cells, ulcers may appear in the mouth and colon, or the person develops some form of severe respiratory infection. Isn't that amazing? So what they're saying is they're saying if you get strep throat, it's an overgrowth of bacteria that's already there. If you get an infection within the lungs, it's an overgrowth of bacteria that's already there. They're saying the bacteria are already there. You're immunocompromised, and that's why it always is about strengthening the host. It's always about strengthening the host. So here's what you do for the flu season. One of the things you always do is it's all about strengthening the host. Two people can expose to the same virus. One skates through it, the other one gets severely affected. What's the difference? It's the same virus. The difference is the strength of the host. So, number one, always start working on lowering your stressors. This is why I say getting adjusted is absolutely huge. My kids get adjusted, my family gets adjusted. I get adjusted as much as possible, although I won't let just anybody adjust me because I really do think there's really bad adjusters that are out there. But lowering down your stressors, get adjusted. This is why, yes, getting adjusted can help to improve the immune system. And they have done studies showing how it does increase CD4 cells and things like that. Number two, keep your insulin and your sugar levels low, okay? The reason why I say that is because sugar competes with vitamin C. Sugar will compete with vitamin C, meaning if I have a glucose molecule and I have vitamin C, they're very chemically similar, and that sugar will get taken in instead of the vitamin C. And vitamin C is actually just providing antioxidant support to your neutrophils, which just help to prevent or extend the life of the neutrophils. But sugar will cause so much oxidative damage. It's such a dirty fuel, and that it can just start to paralyze, start to kill off, and start to decrease the function of the neutrophils, which are very, very important. And then that's why always, guys, keeping your sugar levels low is going to be so important. And then number three, supplement accordingly. And how you do that is by doing proper testing. Okay. All right. Well, what do you mean by about supplements? And I'm going to not go into a lot of detail about this, but vitamin D3, K2, I think this is important. Vitamin D does a wonderful job when it comes to your adaptive immune system. Vitamin D affects 1,500 genetic functions within the cell. And this is why I think getting your vitamin D levels up can be of benefit. Can you overdose vitamin D? Absolutely. But your levels should be at 80 to 90. And those are typically where my levels are at, as well. But in order to get those levels and maintain those levels, I really do have to take between 5,000 and 10,000 IUs, 5,000 to 10,000 IUs per day. I also go out in the sun. So during the winter months, I'll probably take a little bit more vitamin D. The other thing too is astragalus too. Astragalus is really considered a longevity herb, but astragalus actually can help with stem cell production within the bone marrow. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it for everybody because this is actually contraindicated with people have some kind of blood immune system cancer, that you're seeing an increase in leukocytes. If you're so an increase, in that. So anybody that's got some kind of blood cancer, I wouldn't necessarily recommend it. Reishi mushrooms and chaga, these are medicinal mushrooms. Reishi helps to support the adaptive immune system, or the innate system immune system, helps with natural killer cell production. Chaga actually helps the adaptive immune system. But also medicinal mushrooms actually help to feed the thymus, where a lot of these CD8 cells, CD4 cells, where they're maturing within the thymus. And it just helps them facilitate good maturation of those cells. Chaga also contains, some fiber as well. So it can be good, a good source of prebiotic type fiber in certain individuals. Then you have things like echinacea, which can help to increase some of the white blood cell count. Elderberry is a good source of quercetin, vitamin C. Elderberry can also be very good as well. Wellness zinc. I think zinc can be important for a host of things. Zinc can be antiviral and can actually help to support testosterone production in certain individuals. I am going to talk a little bit deeper about licorice. Licorice can exert a very good antiviral activity on certain types of viruses. And then camu camu. Well, why would you recommend camu camu? It has the highest amount of vitamin C without adding a lot of sugar to it. So camu camu is a great source of vitamin C, has some of the highest levels of vitamin C that are in there without getting a lot of sugar. Okay. Now, on the topic of licorice, research progress on the antiviral activity of glycyrrhizin and its derivatives in licorice. Okay. Basically, what they're talking about is they're talking about the active components within licorice. Okay. And here's what they say. Studies have revealed that these compounds exert inhibitory effects on several viruses, including SARS-CoV-2. The main mechanism action of these components include inhibition of the replication and direct inactivation of the virus. Okay. So licorice is actually the active components of licorice have been shown to exert an anti viral effect on things like herpes, hepatitis, influenza, HIV, and yes, on SARS-CoV-2. And I did a video a long time ago about SARS-CoV-2 and Paxlovid. Okay, because then they came out with an antiviral now. Is that if you got diagnosed with COVID or had some of the early symptoms of COVID, go on Paxlovid, which is an antiviral. And I looked at this, and I looked at the research. I'm like, licorice would do the exact same thing, but that they wouldn't promote that because they're trying to come up with drugs, so that they can just build a bejesus, out of your insurance or whatnot and charge you an arm and a leg for that until it becomes, a generic drug. So licorice has actually been found to have an antiviral effect in a host of other viruses as well. Now, here's the thing. You cannot boost your immune system. Everybody says, you're going to boost your immune system. You can't boost your immune system. You can only achieve sufficiency. And sufficiency, I will tell you, is enough. Sufficiency is enough. And that's why I don't fear a virus. I don't fear the measles. I don't fear the flu. I don't fear COVID. I don't fear any of those things. What I fear is being immunocompromised. I believe that sufficiency is enough. And that's why we need to be talking about sufficiency during the flu season and not talking about getting some things in order to try to hyperstimulate the immune system, when in a lot of people, it's just not going to work. And then you're also introducing foreign proteins. You're also introducing toxins and things like that by bypassing the barriers and going straight into the body. So if that makes sense to you, what I want you to do, guys, is I want you to share this video widely. Please share this video with other people who need to hear what I just went over. So coming up, guys, tomorrow, October 14th at 6 o'clock p.m., this is an in-person event. This is our approach to inflammation. This is an in-person event. Please make sure, if you're from the Chicagoland area, get registered for that by going to our Linktree profile. Click on the first thing, you'll see it shake, and that will take you to our Eventbrite page. You get registered in about 30 seconds or so. When you register, you're committing to showing up. My staff will reach out to you to confirm your attendance. We have a gift for you at that event. And then in addition to that, remember, guys, we will be taking a few remote consults. This will be for men in the contiguous 48 states. And also, it's like I said, it's men in the contiguous 48 states. So call right now, 630-553-6149. We'll take people in the order that they called, but we only have room for just a couple of spots. So if you want to work with us remotely, you want to work on getting your health back on track, please make sure that you reach out to us, and we'll call you back and we'll get you scheduled for that appointment. So there really is no such thing as a flu season. So I went over all kinds of research, to talk to you about why there really is no such thing as a flu season. This is why you need to start taking care of your health. You need to start supporting your immune system. You need to start doing the things necessary in order to make your body an inhospitable host to be able to fight off any virus. There really is no such thing as a flu season. It's just low vitamin D, high stress, high amount of sugar type of season. And that's why you need, during this holiday season, you need to do everything that you can to make sure that you're not falling for the narrative. Do everything that you can to keep your body strong and be a great great vehicle of health and not a vehicle of just chronic disease. So guys, I appreciate you being on this live broadcast. Thank you so much. Please share this video with a lot of people. Please like, share, please comment as much as you can. I love you all. I appreciate all of you. Thank you so much for watching this live video. I will be back next week with a new topic. Give me a topic idea if you can. I will be talking about something. I'll probably be provocative. And just remember this, I'll always be provocative. I will always question the narrative because all we're doing is just looking at things from a different perspective. I know that a lot of people don't like for us to question things and to look at it from a different perspective, but it's what's needed in order to move the needle when it comes to healthcare and to continue working on becoming better. Remember, I always say, become the best version of yourself, not some stripped down, watered down version that everyone's telling you to be. So be different during this holiday season coming up, and start to take a stand for the things that matter, which is going to be your health, which is going to be God, and it's going to be your family. So guys, thank you so much for watching this live broadcast. I will see you next week. Make sure that you like our page. We'll always keep you updated with tons of new content and information. Thank you so much for watching this video. We'll see you guys next week. Be well, be blessed. And as I always say, remember who you are.